and welcome to the Joy Behar Show. I am not Joy. I'm Dr. Drew Pinsky sitting in for Joy. Joy, thank you for this opportunity. We're going to start out with Tiger Woods. He woke up today a single man. His divorce from wife Elin becoming final late yesterday. But while Elin's freedom was celebrated in her native Sweden last night, some tabloid reporters suggest there may be different plans for Tiger. Joining me to discuss the mechanics of the drama are Mary Jo Eustace, author of Divorce Sucks. Her husband left her for Tori Spelling. CNN contributor and sports analyst Max Kellerman, and family law and divorce attorney Vikki Ziegler. So, Max, I want to dispel something that was out there about Tiger. Max, you may have something to say about this, but apparently TMZ reported that one of Tiger's alleged mistresses may want him back and will do anything to get him back. I have direct knowledge about that case. That is erroneous information. I know that this individual does not have a man in her life and is not interested in getting Tiger back, for the record. Well,
except that if Tiger's ex-wife just came away with $100 million in spite of the fact that the prenup was what, Vic, like 20, 30 million?
10 to 20 million for a 10-year term.
If I were that woman, I might take him back.
So for Max would go after it. Are you planning any plans for announcing something?
If he'll have me,
I mean, the screws. The prenup's going to be tighter.
Well, how does that work, Vicki? Did you have a prenup and suddenly it's disregarded and somebody walks away with 5 times the amount of money? How does that work?
I mean, Dr. Drew, basically it appears it was renegotiated. So there was sweeteners because apparently
along the way, or because she might be saying something that would be humiliating
Absolutely.
to him?
I think there's probably a lifetime confidentiality.
Hold on, Mary Jo, we have Mary Jo Eustace on satellite. Mary Jo, you were to say something as well?
Well, I think just looking at the situation from an outsider, not even from a legal point of view, his behavior kind of really gave her the upper hand in the divorce because, you know, she's young, she's beautiful, they've only been married for a few years, they have 2 small children, he golfs a lot, among other things. She has her whole life ahead of her, and her silence, I would imagine, to Tiger is worth a lot of money.
Yeah, Mary Jo, you make a really good point. I think really what happened here is a lifetime confidentiality agreement was probably negotiated, and for that, Tiger thought it probably was a smart idea to give Elin much more than she was ever going to get in a court of law. They did it in a fast, expeditious manner, 9 months to get divorced, one of the biggest celebrity divorce payouts ever in the athlete world. I mean, happened very quickly. So certainly, I don't think we're ever going to hear Elin Woods talking, and I think, Dr. Drew, I believe probably it was a couple million for every indiscretion that probably Tiger Woods had.
I have no doubt that people are getting paid off for that, of course. But Max, you have a problem with that?
I have a question for you while we have you here.
Go right ahead.
Dr. Drew. Okay. It seems to me that the idea of sex addiction is directly proportional to the public perception of the attractiveness of the women with whom the guy is cheating.
No. That's not true. But I'll tell you what.
It seems that way.
But here's the point that I think you need to think about, though, which is that, listen, there can be no conversation or debate about whether Tiger Woods has sex addiction. He was admitted to a sex addiction program. You have to meet criteria for that in order to gain admission to an accredited program. He had it. The issue, though, is did he go back to golfing too soon? Should he be thinking about dating? And my own opinion is he went back way too soon. I declared that when he went back to golf that this is not going to go well, and I think that's why Elin left. Do you think he went back to golf too soon? Hang on a second.
He went way back too soon.
Oh, I agree with you, Mary Jo, but let's hear from Max real quick.
I mean, from a golfing point of view, it appears that he did.
Right. He's neither a live man or a dead man. He's not active in his treatment for sex addiction, nor is he really golfing the way he should.
And this is the worst he's ever golfed in his pro career.
Do you guys that are in the sports scene have a hypothesis?
Well, it seems that he's distracted, and understandably so. And by the way, there's a ticking clock on Tiger, just from a purely sports point of view, because I believe there's a Tiger Woods effect. In other words, once upon a time, golfers were paunchy middle-aged men, and to a large extent they still are. But because of Tiger Woods, a lot of fathers put golf clubs in their athletic sons' hands from a very early age.
Do you think this has changed all that?
I think
it's completely changed all that.
Mary Jo,
I think it has.
How is that?
Well, I think it has. Just as an observer, I'm actually from a golfing family, and we were obsessed with Tiger Woods. But you know, things that we didn't notice about him before, or maybe you did as a sports writer. And by the way, I ran into some sports writers at a writers' conference a year ago, and they said in the sports world, people knew about his behavior, that it was common knowledge that he was engaging in this type of behavior.
Well, even though it was common knowledge, Mary Jo, was it difficult for her to walk away, do you think? Even though it seemed to have been something matter of fact, it was still tough to walk away, was it not?
I would imagine. I mean, you know, she was young and in love, and they married, and they had 2 beautiful children, and she probably thought she had this wonderful life. And then these indiscretions came out one after another. I mean, the humiliation and the psychological damage for her to go through this would be horrendous. So, I mean, the payout is fantastic, and she can get on with her life and, you know, lead a meaningful, productive life. I mean, she has an education.
Hang a second,
She's
Mary
an
Jo.
interesting woman.
Vicki is shaking your head
Yeah,
and
I mean,
smirking.
listen, from a legal perspective, yes, but from an emotional perspective, I mean, you know, everyone was kind of speculating, did Elin Woods know that she was going to live the life of Riley, but on the side, Tiger Woods would be cheating on her? And that's a question that everyone was asking. And I think, you know, from a financial standpoint, that's great. She's one of the richest women right now that anyone could ever ask for. But how is her emotional state? And, you know, you talk about Tiger going to rehab for 2 months, pouring his heart out to her, telling her things perhaps that nobody else wants to hear, and then kind of going back to the golfing world so quickly. So I think there's this cathartic journey that people have to take a step back and say, wait a second, do you really want to work on the marriage, or do you want to just give up?
All that stuff is, I mean, that may be the case, but that really is conjecture. Maybe he went back too fast. Maybe it helped focus him and get him by. But from a purely sports point of view, he's golfing much worse than he used to. And my point originally that I was making is that he only has maybe another 5 years until all those little kids who started golfing because he turned pro are now excellent golfers competing with him, and his level of dominance declines anyway. So if he continues to golf poorly for another 3 or 4 or 5 years, his kind of window of opportunity to be the most dominant golfer of all time, I think, is gone.
Is there a point he should sort of tap out and say, look, I'm not making it, I should go on and teach or do something else?
I don't know, be a poster person for sex addiction and teach people and role models.
I don't think he's going that direction.
I can't see him doing that.
Mary Jo, hold on 1 second, please. Vicki, why do some women stay and others leave? You must have a lot of experience with this. Why?
I do, and I think it's a personality thing. Really, it's about how you were raised. Do you think that you are codependent or dependent on a man?
Wait a minute. Now, some women will stay and participate. In fact, most partners of sex addicts stay in the marriage. They actually stay and hang out and participate in the treatment. But we see today, Sandra Bullock takes off right away. Elin now leaving.
Depends.
Is it the money that makes them leave? Is it money that makes them stay? Is it the children, or is it many more complicated issues?
I think it's a combination. I think you can't just point to one emotional issue. You can't just say it's the children, it's the way you were raised, it's people in Sweden, females are, you know, strong, and that's what it's being reported, she's a strong woman.
Yes, I got to read you what they said in Sweden. There's a great quote here. Hang on, I'm losing.
I think they're in the streets, by the way.
Yeah, Swedish newspaper. Yeah, Swedish women like Elin are brought up to be independent and strong. That's why she left.
No, sir.
That may or may not be true, but
Dr. Drew.
Yes, Mary Jo.
Dr. Drew, can I ask you a question? Because when did this incident with Tiger happen? It happened in November with the car crash, and now we're into August and they're divorced. I mean, she couldn't possibly emotionally process everything that's happened to her. I mean, this just sounds like total survival to get out of the marriage and get her life back. But won't this take years and years for her to get over this type of public betrayal?
Incidentally, the reason I think it's not just women leaving marriages where their husband's a sex addict or vice versa. I think the entire baby boomer generation. I've recently overheard.
This I want to hear it. The entire generation, ladies and gentlemen. So hold on to your hats.
Yes. It's essentially the explosion in divorce in the last generation and a half has to do essentially with an unwillingness to work out the unpleasantries of marriage and a really selfish inclination to want to be happy. Which I think is fine if you don't have kids. But once you have kids, who's perfectly happy in a marriage?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, hang on a second, Jenna. In fact, Vicki, I'll ask you this question. I had a child once, a friend of mine's child, say to her, you know, she talked about her own divorce. She said, you know, I'm not happy. And the child piped up, a 9-year-old said, whose happiness is more important, yours or mine? Because I'm miserable since you guys are apart.
Damn straight, that 9-year-old made a good point.
Well, happiness is very important, but it's also about being a role model in a relationship. And if two parents can't even get along and they're fighting and they're being disrespectful to one another,
but you get help with that. I've seen those things get solved all the time.
But they both have to want to go to an expert to get help, somebody like you. If you're both not in it to make it work by an expert.
And if it's easy to get a divorce, then you're less likely to want to work it out.
In most states, it is, Max.
If Elin and Tiger came to you, what would you advise them?
I'm sorry?
If Elin and Tiger came to you, how would you advise them?
I certainly would have sent them to a therapist immediately.
You wouldn't have said, let's get this underway, this is irretrievable.
Oh, it's never irretrievable. There's always hope. There's always a way out in the sense that you can make changes to a marriage and bring two people together, but you both have to want to do it together.
So
you have to be on the same page.
I think what Vicki's saying is golf is the problem here. Golf is the one thing that's usually not there.
It wasn't Elin Woods' looks, I'll tell you that.
It's the entire generation that I'm casting aspersions upon.
But
the reality is that there are exceptions, and in a minority of cases, it really is irreconcilable, right? I mean, what can you do? And given Tiger's status and the public humiliation of Elin and the way everything happened, maybe this really is a case where the sooner they get out of this marriage and get on with their lives, the better. I mean, you know.
The bottom line is it is profoundly sad for everybody. It's sad for Tiger. It's sad for Elin. It's sad for these kids. Mary Jo, last words.
how could you possibly advise her to stay in that marriage? I mean, just publicly humiliated, horrible betrayal. I mean, at a certain point in time, you've got to say, you've got to move on and cut your losses. And it happens.
Well, you're right, and I think Sandra Bullock would agree with you, but I must tell you that I've seen couples that do get through this and lead to happy lives, because the fact of the matter is humans have a tendency to repeat things in their relationships over and over again, unless you get a lot of treatment. I hope, say, the likes of Sandra Bullock's out there getting care for herself so she doesn't make this mistake again. Thank you, guys. Thank you to my panel. We'll be right back in just a minute.